We're back again with another transfer Q&A. Hi, I'm Ben. It's good to have you with us, and you're watching All for United. If you've got this on Twitch or Twitter, come and subscribe to our channel. We've got loads going on, and we're leading the way when it comes to United fan content at the moment, if I do say so myself, although I'm slightly biased. YouTube.com/All for United is where you need to go. Hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, give the video a like, and get involved in the live chat, because the whole point of this transfer Q&A show is to give you the chance to ask some top writers, journalists, and broadcasters any Manchester United related transfer questions, and you're always really creative, so get in the live chat and get your questions in. On the show today, Daniel, Storey, delighted to have you on with me, buddy. How's it going?
Yeah, very well, thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
What's this time like for you? Is it super busy? Because I know that you write, but also you're a broadcaster as well, so I suppose you have a lot going on during what they call transfer city season.
Yeah, I do. I mean, obviously this year is an exception because I'm still doing Europa League and Champions League finals next few days, and then there's a 6-day break until the Community Shield. So it's obviously it's even more nonsense than normal, and I'm expecting the transfer window to kind of bleed more into the season than it usually does. So I think we're kind of spinning plates between live stuff and transfers.
No, of course, and with football going on, do you like this whole summer? I know that we've been pushed into it, but do you like this summer club tournament as it is now? Do you like having the Champions League and European football during the summer break?
Yeah, it feels like a Euros replacement, basically, doesn't it? The kind of one-off single games, and I think they've been far better than we thought they would be. There are issues about fans getting to games if this was replicated, but it was the only option this summer, and next season is going to be incredibly frantic in terms of scheduling. I don't think there's a free game week all season, so yeah, Fast and the Furious is good.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm loving watching football. It's great, and it's good to have something different other than internationals, I think, which is obviously superb. Now, of course, we have got you on to talk transfer, so we'll get straight into it. Questions are coming in thick and fast, so make sure if you want your question answered, we're only going to be on for about 20 minutes, so make sure you get those questions in now. But I want to go to a story that broke this morning, Daniel, if that's okay with you, and it's around the Glazers. Apparently, multiple reports this morning that Joel Glazer is the one who's standing in the way of United completing a deal for Jadon Sancho. Apparently, he isn't willing to sanction the ridiculous fee. I mean, we do have to take it with a pinch of salt because these same rumours came out when we were toying over the Bruno Fernandes fee, I think, as well. So is it more outlets trying to make a scapegoat out of somebody within the United hierarchy, so to speak? Or do you think that actually the United owners here are being a bit more proactive this summer with what's happened due to the pandemic?
I think there's kind of two things there. Firstly, there's no doubt that financially, football, even at the top level, faces an uncertain, if not a bleak future. You know, lower down in the Premier League, it's bleak. In the Premier League, it's uncertain. So it would not surprise me if club directors were, if not getting directly involved, then certainly trying to put the brakes on some of the lavish spending we've seen in recent summers. That said, this whole Jadon Sancho move has been fueled by sort of rumour and counter rumour and leak and counter leak, which is just two sides making clear their negotiation positions and using those leaks as a means of doing so. So if for example, United say, "Oh, Joel Glazer says money's a bit tight this summer," maybe they suggest to Dortmund, "Look, you're going to have to reduce that price by 10 million, 15, maybe even 20 million, and then we can get a deal done." It's all a game of cat and mouse, and as we saw with Harry Maguire and Bruno Fernandes, these things do or don't come out in the wash.
And do you know what frustrates me though? I've never seen a club or a transfer where a club who's selling a player be so open about the fact that they're not willing to accept anything but a certain amount. So in terms of how deals are done, look, we're not talking about FIFA here, but like in terms of how deals are done, surely if the Glazers or Woodward are not willing to go, right, okay, oh god, guest appearance from my cat here. That's lovely, isn't it? It's clearly interested in the Jadon Sancho. She's very much against the Glazers, by the way. Can I just put that out there for any United fan who's wondering? Yeah, so in terms of the black and whiteness, I suppose, of this deal, if we're not willing to pay the fee, it's just not going to happen, is it? It's as simple as that. There's no bargaining chip in here at all.
That's certainly Dortmund's state. They've been very clear on this. They've said he has 3 years left on his deal. He has given us no indication that he's agitating for a move. So this is the fee. We're more than happy to sell him, but this is the fee we want, and this is what you'll pay. And they are in a dominant position here. They know Manchester United have very serious interest. They know they'd like to sign him. They probably suspect that Jadon Sancho would like the move himself, but is also not prepared, given the leap of faith Dortmund took on him, is not prepared yet to kind of kick up a fuss and leak through his agent that he'd like a deal done. That may happen as we move further on in the window, but isn't happening yet.
Yeah, it's a really strange one, isn't it? This, I don't know where I am with it, Daniel. Who do I believe? Who don't I believe? Is it? What are your thoughts? I think this is a good time to bring in Niffin's question. Actually, do you think it's true that United just don't have the funds to get this deal done?
I think they have the funds if they want them. I think, again, there's two things at play here. Firstly, Manchester United is trying to sell players this summer. And it might be that they would rather get as good fees as they'd like for those players before then reinvesting on a £120 million player. And secondly, as I say, the rules have kind of changed this summer in that nobody really knows what players are worth. If next season is disrupted and the market crashes further, does £120 million look far too much, or does the market rebound and football get back to normal and Jadon Sancho carry on doing his thing and suddenly it makes complete sense? I don't think anyone can say with any real certainty what that market should be, because there's no certainty in the global pandemic, which is exactly what's fueling this kind of disarray at the moment. So Manchester United have funds. The Glazers have funds. It's whether they choose to use them. And what we know about them is that they constantly play this cat and mouse game. As I say, they did it with Harry Maguire. Leicester said, we want this. They said, we haven't got that money. We won't pay that money. And eventually, 2 months down the line, they pretty much did.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think actually Sidant has reflected that in his question a little bit here, which I suppose it'd be good to get an insight from you here a little bit, Daniel, when it comes to briefing stories and stories that come out which are pushed as, so to speak, a narrative. So talking here about the Sancho deal, is it still happening? We'll get to that question in a second. But with the talk about Joel Glazer not wanting to pay the money, and with us seeing a recurring theme of clubs coming out and really taking the royal Mickey when it comes to transfer fees for players when United are involved. Leicester done it, Sporting done it ahead of Bruno. We've seen Palace do it before they finally sold Wan-Bissaka to us. What can we believe? I know there's tiered sources out there, and Reddit have made a big thing about this tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. But as a fan, is it a case that we've got to go back to days without Twitter? We've got to basically ignore the Twitter rumor, and we have to wait until something comes up on teletext, or there's a solid story in the paper. What do we do as fans in this time when there's so much uncertainty over a player who seemed to be nailed on at one point?
I mean, the obvious reality and conclusion is that fans could just not choose not to be interested until they know it's happening. But we've kind of opened Pandora's box on that. That time has gone. The teletext years have gone, because not only do media organisations know that transfer rumours sell very well, but so do agents and clubs. And when your own club has websites with transfer news on it, it's a great way of driving traffic. So it's an industry, or a part of an industry, that's almost entirely built on noise. But at the very root of that noise, deals clearly do happen. Big deals do happen. I think the difference now is that we get drip fed every single stage of the process, whereas before we perhaps only heard when a fee was agreed, or a personal term was agreed, or the deal was done. Now we get that drip free process. And to be honest, I understand how frustrating that is for supporters, because there is a desperation amongst them for Manchester United to improve their squad.
Yeah, 100%. So on the Sancho deal, look, we've spoken to a few people. I don't want you to put your neck on the line here, Daniel, but just where you're at in terms of what you've seen. I'll give my honest opinion now. Just I don't think this deal's going to get done this summer. I just don't think it is going to get done this summer, despite the fact that even Ronan Murphy, who writes a lot and has a lot of contacts in Germany, said he thinks it will get done, but it's going to take forever. Jamie Jackson said that he thinks it will get done, but again, it's either going to take loads of time or it's going to be done like that. It's just going to be action. Someone like Joel Glazer is going to go, here's the money, just get him now. So with the Europa League done and dusted, you expect United to start making movements, but I don't know. I like what Fabrizio Romano's made of himself, but I'm not carried away by him, and I'm not carried away by journalists who obviously are trusted or tier one. I'm being more realistic than that. I like you've just said there. For me, he's not a United player until I see him holding the shirt. Forget the here we goes. He's not a United player until he's holding the shirt. So what do you think? Do you think there will be an eventuality this summer where he becomes a United player, or do you think that if, as the deal is right now, it's just point blank not going to happen?
My gut feeling is that, as with Maguire and Bruno, a deal will eventually be done. Whether that's this summer, whether that's January, as with Bruno, whether they have to wait another year to see what happens to the market, that I don't know. I mean, I should say that Fabrizio Romano is one of the transfer journalists. He doesn't leak rumours for the sake of
No.
leaking rumours. He gets that information, and the reality is that there are two sides to every piece of information that a journalist is given. Someone has given them that for a reason. Now, it might be that they've dug deep and found it out, and nobody wanted to know it, but that's quite unusual. Generally, it's that one party would like some information to come out, whether that's agent, selling club, or buying club. Dortmund have been very happy to leak their the answer principle. Manchester United have been happy to leak their we can't afford this, or we don't want to pay that principle. The one thing we haven't really had so far in this deal is the Sancho stuff. And I think that's probably what Manchester United are waiting on. I think they'd like Jadon Sancho to lean on Dortmund a little bit more and say, look, can we make this happen? Because I'd really quite like this. And do you know what? 110 million is quite a lot of money to you.
Yeah, no, 100%. And hopefully, fingers crossed, as a United fan, this gets done. But again, thank you for your insight there. I think it's really important. And again, that's not me degrading Fabrizio's work. It's just that I am one of those very old school people that until it comes down to it, I think that we just wind ourselves up, don't we? A lot. If you just sat there looking at the same transfer window all the time, just wind yourself up to take the stress out. And one thing that we could end up getting stressed out about is whether potentially United make another signing this summer. Now, reports came out, I think it was last night, on Brooks, which is very, very interesting. Not last night, night before, that potentially we could be linked to a move with him. Now, I think the papers, like you said, who are interested more in clicks, labelled him as a Sancho alternative. I think it makes more sense that he's a Grealish alternative, because it looks like we're going to be priced out of a deal there. What do you make of Brooks? And do you think that the Bournemouth lad could become a very useful option for United when it comes to recruiting squad depth?
He's an interesting one, because if you'd have asked me 18 months ago or 2 years ago, I'd have said he has all the talent in the world to get as far as he wants. He did have a pretty serious injury and hasn't quite looked the same player since, although there are kind of reports about whether he really was at full fitness for the time he played last season. If he reaches that initial potential, absolutely. I know Ryan Giggs has been kind of waxing lyrical about him, given him, he's the Wales manager and obviously has that United connection, and it kind of fits. But one thing he will need is patience, and that's the difficult thing at Manchester United at the moment, because there is such an urge to improve that squad and improve the first team and win trophies and finally sustainably move forward. Players don't get an awful lot of patience. I read a stat the other day about Daniel James that said he played more in 2019-20 for Manchester United than he had in the rest of his career put together. And I think fans sometimes make the mistake of assuming that when Man United sign a player, they're signing the finished product. I don't think you're signing the finished product with David Brooks yet. And if I saw 40 million quoted, I'd be staggered if Manchester United paid that much.
Yeah, well, but then again, also, Daniel, I suppose it's the same story with Grealish. Good player, but 80 million. Again, it's a very, very weird market, isn't it? Where clubs like Villa, Dortmund, who we've just spoken about, potentially Bournemouth are in a different boat. They've just been relegated, so maybe they would barter down to a 30 to 35 million price tag. But especially if Brooks pushes for the move, by the way, which he so would do. If United came in for him, he'd be banging on that door saying, let me go, let me go, let me go. So I suppose it's United trying to use the market properly, I suppose, to make the most. Because obviously, when the pandemic hit, Gary Neville, I remember that famous chat Gary Neville had when he turned around and said, United should be in pole position to make the most of this transfer window. There's nothing going on. Like you're not hearing anything now, are you? Apart from Sancho. It's very odd.
I'm not, and I've never been convinced by Ed Woodward as a man to negotiate football transfers. I think he's pretty good at negotiating business deals, but I think that's probably where his expertise ends in that regard. And quite frankly, Manchester United should be pretty embarrassed that it gets to this stage every summer, because there's a thing with United whereby they get sucked like a moth towards a flame for the big signing, which quite often justified. But it seems to be that everyone's efforts gets focused in one area, and if that transfer happens, great. But suddenly everyone realizes that nothing else got done. It's like redecorating the bedroom 3 times to make it look perfect when there's leaks in the lounge. There are other things that United should be doing. They should be spinning different plates here, not kind of focusing on one thing.
I think that definitely comes down to the lack of footballing people in the boardroom, but I think that's a conversation for another day. Just a few more names. We mentioned Grealish there, Daniel. Do you think he's a must-get for United this summer? Do you think a Jack Grealish signing for United could make the difference to squad? I mean, we've seen Ollie in games not look at the bench, and the Europa League tie against Seville was probably the perfect example of a time when potentially we needed a Grealish or a Brooks off the bench.
Yeah, it's a huge fee to pay for a bench player, it should be said. And if you look at Manchester United's probable first choice midfield next season, they've got two players in Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes who love time on the ball, who will always take 2 or 3 touches if one would do. Quite often, that's the right opportunity. They look for the pass, they make it. Grealish to me seems like another one of those. So I don't see how he gets into a first choice United midfield, I have to say. And my gut feeling is that 80 million is an astonishing amount of money to pay for a player that isn't a guaranteed starter.
Yeah, no, 100%. And what about another question here? Sorry, by the way, guys, we've got about 5 to 10 minutes left. So if you want to get your questions in the live chat, do it quickly. Come over to YouTube, youtube.com/all for United. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you turn on your notifications. Joseph says Grealish or Van der Beek news would be great. So is there anything, we've just mentioned there, Grealish. What about Van der Beek? It looks like the new Barca boss, Koeman, could be interested in taking Van der Beek to Barcelona now. We know the move to Madrid collapsed, so he's definitely keen on a move to Spain. We know apparently there's a price tag there for him, which is baffling why someone hasn't gone, right, we'll have that, because he looks like a very promising player. Do you think he could be in for a move to United this summer?
I think when I look at that Man United midfield, I think what they need is the defensive enforcer. In modern football, they are a little bit more multifunctional than that. So they pass and break up play rather than just sitting in front of a defence. But Nemanja Matic, I think it's fair to say his time has probably gone as a first team starter. I think there are probably still doubts about Fred as well, although he improved massively last season. I'm surprised they aren't looking at that. Either a defensive enforcer or that kind of passing quarterback, that Thiago Alcantara style to start moves. That's where they're in centre back, where I'd be looking even over the Sancho position. I have to say, I think if they get that sorted, they're a far more cohesive unit than they are just signing a right-sided forward.
You mentioned there about centre-back or anywhere else, for United to look to strengthen. And obviously squad depth, as we've mentioned before, is a massive thing. The Sancho deal's a massive thing, a bit more quality up top. But, a striker could be needed as well, actually, if we look at United not being clinical enough. Although I love Martial, by the way. I'm just saying I'll still play him up top and I wouldn't go for a first-team striker. But if you've got someone there who can come off the bench and get you another 15 goals a season, which is potentially the role that Greenwood would go into if Sancho comes into the side. But is there any more rumours around players for United? We've heard a few centre backs mentioned. It looks like Gabriel's going to be going to Arsenal now, by the looks of it. And we haven't heard anything about Pau Torres, and there's whispers about United looking at Douglas Costa as an alternative to Sancho, but then also the left back as well, Sandro as well from Juventus. So it seems to be a massive rumour mill, but not a lot of concrete around actual players that United are looking at this moment in time.
Yeah, if I look at United squad now, presuming that they can move on players, and that's certainly Chris Smalling defensively. It might well be Eric Bailly as well, or one of him or Victor Lindelof, although I don't suspect they get the fees they wanted. But I think they need a defensive leader, not by example necessarily. I think Harry Maguire does that pretty well, but I think Maguire needs someone alongside him. I think Manchester United look unnervy, or nervy, but kind of unsettled by opponents when Maguire doesn't start a game well, and I think he needs that solid presence next to him. They're talking about, one thing I've seen is Issa Diop from West Ham, who is one of those players who moved to the Premier League with a view to a Big Six club. He's got an agent who saw the West Ham as a good move to London, but very much saw it as a stepping stone to a bigger club. And he's still young, and maybe a player like that I look at. But again, we're saying it, when Manchester United come to town for a player, the price is. They know the desperation of fans. They know the desperation of everyone. So it's whether they can get them done for good prices.
I think the rumoured fee I saw was they're open to selling him for 40 million, but if United come around, it's 60 million. You just know. You just know it is. And then it turns into a bidding war and some random clubs interested in him who actually aren't interested in him. But I agree. I think Diop was brilliant against United earlier on this season at the London Stadium. I thought it was terrific. And I think he's a good player. He's fast. He's got good strength. Again, he's got that year or so now, 2 years, I think, in the Premier League. And again, as you said, he's a young lad. He could be the answer, because I don't think Eric Bailly is too far away from being that perfect partner for Maguire, but it's just the injuries and it's the lack of composure. And I think Diop has got a little bit of composure as well for a player. So when you put him next to someone like Maguire and a right back who can defend like Wan-Bissaka, who knows how good Diop could be? But again, we'll have to wait and see. I'm just going to go through a few last questions and tweets. Hello to Sidan, who's back with another question. Should we expect heavy activity after Champions League and Europa League? As obviously it's been quite a quiet transfer window for all clubs right now.
Yeah, I think it will inevitably kick off more now, but I think it will be generally a quieter window anyway. The big six clubs will probably spend, if not as much as normal, then they will spend pretty lavishly. But we're kind of waiting for a domino to fall. We're waiting for one club to sell a player to kind of knock everything on, which hasn't happened yet. I think purely, as Sedan says, because of the late running Europa competitions.
Yeah, it makes sense. Hello to Lee Roberts, who says United should have 2, if not 3 signings so far, with another to come later. Instead, we have nothing. Very slow moving. Earlier on, Daniel hit on the fact that the incompetence of the board and Ed Woodward is just, it's not a good look. Embarrassing, actually, I think you used the word, which I don't agree, Daniel. Which I totally agree with, Daniel, because it is. Nadeem says, nothing new. Bennett City season read someone that will link with 113 players in January. 113. I tell you what, people say what they like about United, but we do sell stories. That's one thing we do. Hello to Oblumi. Sorry, buddy, I can't say your name. I'm going to call you Mr. Samuel or Sir Samuel. I'm going to call you, or Samuel. I believe United transfer budget net is not more than 120 euros. So do we prepare for the return of Smalling and perhaps a winger? So what do you think, Daniel? If that is the case, do we go for a cut price winger and Smalling's that solution at centre back? I know you hit on a second ago that he is not the solution, but could that be where United are looking to cut corners this summer?
By all accounts, Smalling feels his time is done at United. He thoroughly enjoyed himself at Roma. He would love to join them permanently. If Roma are prepared to pay the £20 million, that deal I think will almost certainly be done. And if not, I suspect there are 1 or 2 other Serie A clubs looking at Chris Smalling, because he was fantastic in Italy, and I think he just sees this as his opportunity to kind of reinvent or kind of rejuvenate his career. So I suspect he'll go, and Lingard is the other one who we're presuming will leave for a fee of around, maybe a similar fee.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, especially as the players start going out the door, who we bring in, because if our depth is bad at the moment, imagine letting go of 4 or 5 players and not bringing in some kind of replacement. It's slightly unthinkable. Although these players might not be good enough for United, if you've got no one to replace them, it's like, well, you're just putting yourself in an even stickier situation. One last question, Daniel, for you. Dean Henderson, it looks like he was back at Carrington today. Sheffield United have signed Ramsdale. I think fantastic signing for Sheffield United, to be honest. They've got a permanent keeper in there who looks like he's got bundles of talent. Henderson's, by the looks of it, coming back to United, could again pave the way for Romero to leave the club for a fee and get those wages off the book this summer. But talking about wages, 100k is apparently £100,000 a week wages will be rewarded to Dean Henderson because of his fantastic form this season. Where do you see him slotting into this United squad? Is he the new number 1, or is he the new backup choice for David De Gea?
Yeah, I don't think he's the number 1 yet in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's eyes anyway. I think there are 2 options. One is that they give him this bumper new deal, and as part of that reward, he gets the money and they say, look, give us a season as our cup goalkeeper. It's going to be a relentless season anyway. Stay and do that. Let's see what happens next summer. And the other is obviously that he's loaned out to another Premier League club, and they are expected to fuel kind of half his wages. That's probably up to Dean Henderson. He's actually been pretty patient with Manchester United, I think, and it's obviously not an ideal scenario for United, or it's a kind of nice headache to have, in that they're both excellent goalkeepers, or have been. I don't see him as number 1 yet, Solskjaer. I think there's too much faith in De Gea still.
I also think that Dean Henderson is a massive Manchester United fan, and his dream, you even heard him last season, his dream is to be the Manchester United number 1. If he's got to wait another season for that and actually be a cup keeper for a season and show what he can do in cup games, he's going to snap your hand off at it. I personally think anyway, because if everything is said, he just seems like the ultimate professional. But I've got to say, I will be sad to see Romero go. Just incredible goalkeeper, and he's going to improve the side. Just hope he's not going to Leeds. hope it's not. There was rumours at the start of the window that it could be. I hope it's not, because Romero is going to be brilliant in goal for anyone. He's going to win games by being in goal for a side. So hello to Nadim, who says Pereira to Valencia. Nadim, I'll answer that one. I don't think Valencia are in a position to buy anyone at the moment. I think there's a lot going on there. Hello to Shady, who says we need many players like City and Liverpool, quality ones, not just one players yet. We need to improve the depth of the squad, definitely. Any out-of-state Sancho news? Paul, you're going to have to go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/all4united, and watch this from the start, because Daniel done a lot and a big long piece about the way tabloids, writers and journalists report news as well. So you go and check that out, and it's all about Sancho. For now, Daniel, I think we've run out of time. I think that's all we've got time for. Thank you for jumping on, buddy. And where can people go and find you online and find some of your work?
Yeah, so I write for the I newspaper, and I write for Optus Sport, which is the Australian Premier League broadcaster, and Totally Show podcast, etc. So yeah.
Brilliant.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. Check out his handle on our Twitter at All4United. Hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications. Usman's on with an episode of The Topic later on. You've got to go and check it out. It's about the Manchester United team of 99 versus the Manchester United team of 08. Do not miss that. It's going to be an interesting debate. Daniel, thank you. And we'll be back with another transfer Q&A very, very soon. Your chance to ask some of the top writers, broadcasters and journalists questions about Manchester United transfer news.